Hey y'all, and welcome to Culture Cult, where we are one podcast with 197 countries to explore travel, stories, and history from. I'm your host, Marie, and this episode we're diving into a country. So each season we feature different countries to highlight, whether it be randomly spinning on the globe, fan choice, or featuring a local from a certain country and hearing their perspective. You can have a say in the next country featured by following our Instagram at culturecultshow. Also, remember to comment, rate, and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on. Cheers and enjoy! Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode on the country of Romania. Now this one's gonna be really interesting because our guest used to live in Romania. So we're gonna get some really firsthand experience of what it's like there. And then we're gonna end on an incredible story of a Romanian woman who pushed the envelope in aviation, activism, and she lived a life of perseverance. Her name was Smaranda Brăescu. So a lot in store for y'all, but let's go ahead and welcome our guest and my aunt, Robin Collins. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on, especially since you have been to Romania. But where are you at in the world right now?
I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in the middle of the mountains. I'm in an area called the Montford Historic District. So we're very close to downtown Asheville.
Yeah. So for those
I own a bed and breakfast.
Yes. And for those who don't know, I'd be like, Asheville, it sounds like Nashville. Like, okay, Asheville is not Nashville. It's a super cute town in North Carolina. She was saying, I think it's a really great stop if you're ever in America and in the South because it has lots of live music, breweries. You said you're at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It's your backyard pretty much, the mountains.
Yeah, the Blue Ridge Mountains. Yeah. There's hiking, biking, driving. The Blue Ridge is beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Lots to offer. Great food. Great arts district, the River Arts District. So it's beautiful here. My husband calls it like a little Colorado town in the middle of the East Mountains.
I completely agree with it. And if you're ever in North Carolina, it's a really good stop. And you also mentioned you do have an inn there called Applewood Manor, if you want to dive into that.
Applewood Manor is a bed and breakfast with 6 rooms, and we have completely revamped it. It's more like a boutique hotel.
Yes.
Of course, we still have the breakfast. We have great culinary programs. We have a cycling program. We're a mile from downtown. And basically, we curated the property around our lives and our personality. So there's a lot of art.
Yes.
One of the things that people notice the most is the art. We have, as much as we can, local produce, local meats. We have local cheeses. 3 Graces cheeses. We also offer dinners, wine tastings. We brought in wines from friends. It's kind of like this little bitty treasure in the middle of the Montford Historic District in Asheville.
Yeah, it's definitely eclectic in honestly, an all-inclusive experience. It's not just a place like you go sleep and then you're like, what do I do around town? Like I feel like you want to actually maybe hang out at the place and like talk to people, and you have chefs like come and host dinners.
We have had 2 guest chefs that came and hosted dinners all weekend. The first one was Mads Westland, who is formerly from Noma. He has a restaurant that's about to open in Brooklyn called Fire and Ice. And then we also had Chef Xavier Mathieu from Provence, which is near our house in Provence.
Yeah, it's definitely a super, super unique experience. So if you're into cycling, culinary experiences, honestly, sitting in a beautiful backyard, I mean, definitely check out Applewood Manor when you are in Asheville. And we're going to dive again one more time at the end of it so you can get more details about it. But you were saying like, yeah, you have a house in France. You're definitely a world traveler, and you inspired me as a kid growing up in Alabama. I just didn't know people traveled like that. And so what are some places around the world that you find special that you've been to or maybe lived in?
The reason that we have a house in France is because France was the very first place I went to overseas. We went to Paris. So Paris will always be special in my heart. I mean, I think Paris is special to everybody in different ways. It's kind of a city of romance. Yes. Everything around you is just incredible. There's so many places. Istanbul's Turkey. That was one of my favorite places to ever go. When we lived in Romania, we went quite a few times to Istanbul because it was a quick little 30-minute flight when I lived in Romania, right after we moved there.
So, I mean, like why were you all in Romania?
Well, Stephen worked for Colgate-Palmolive. His territory was Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And this is in 95 when we got married. And so they wanted to send him to Bucharest. And so 2 weeks before our wedding, they said we might be moving to Bucharest.
Oh my God.
Stephen's like, don't worry. We said no. And then, of course, 2 months later, he's like, guess what? I knew nothing about Romania. And normally when they send you overseas, you go there and you check the place out and you decide if you want to do it. But we didn't have time. We just kind of pulled the trigger and said, okay, fine, we'll do it. I had to quit my job. It was a lot of different things that we had to do with movers and visas. And I got to visit Poland on the way. And this was all on the way to Bucharest. And, the whole time thinking, this is so cool. I'm getting to move to a foreign country. Wahoo me. And then we show up in Bucharest and it's all, wet and soggy. It just snowed. It's like gray and drab and everything was dirty. Okay.
So that was like immediate shock, culture shock.
Getting into the airport, I can't even explain it. So, and then because Stephen and I both worked, we kind of had two different agendas. I had to get our house ready and he had to completely immerse himself into his position and his people. While not knowing the language.
This is a lot.
Yeah. We didn't know Romanian, so we had to, all of this without knowing the language. So now, good thing is Romanian is a Romance language.
Yes,
and I had taken French growing up. It's actually more like Italian.
Yeah.
Most like Italian. Actually, I took classes when I first got there, and there were 3 Italian men and me.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know you said when you first got there, your first thoughts were like, whoa, cold, soggy, it's all rushed. How did your feelings change throughout your time there? And were there certain things about the culture and smells and colors that you started to like grow on you?
Initially, I would say the first week it was pretty drab and cold, and it was April, so it was kind of that transition, rainy, snowy, slushy, dirty. We had to live in the hotel for 6 weeks. We had an apartment that was getting fixed up. So initially it was just me trying to figure out the language, me trying to, the water there is really bad. And I knew the water there was really bad, but when you're eating things, you don't think about what gets touched by water.
Yes.
And so I was sick every day. Like my stomach, I was sick every day. There was always, at first it was like, oh yeah, ice, can't have ice in my drinks anymore. Yes. And then it was salad, couldn't eat anything raw.
Oh no.
So initially it was just a lot of that transitioning, figuring out what was going to make me sick and what wasn't going to make me sick.
Yeah.
So we had to, for me, my job was to get us food every day that wouldn't kill us. I can't explain 96 in Romania. There weren't a lot of European influence at that time yet.
Okay.
It was still in that transition just after communism.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to explain how it was hard to get food. And I know that sounds weird, but it was just hard to get food. And so immediately they introduced me to, there's the International Women's Association. I was not allowed to work. I didn't have a work visa. And so I went and visited and did meetings with them, and they kind of, told me places to go and where to eat and, things like that. So I learned everything through them. We also did fundraisers for Romanian orphanages. We did, I got super involved in that.
You were there at an interesting time. You're at the end of communism, and it's today in Romania. Oh my God, it looks really fun. A lot of Eastern Europe is like bopping with like hostels and parties and bars, and I have a feeling that's just not the energy that you got introduced to in 96.
It was different. Chernobyl was in 86.
Oh wow, yeah, a lot of events are around this time.
Yeah, the 80s, and this is 10 years later. But the Black Sea is where they got their fish, and that's where the rivers from Chernobyl went into. So we were told not to eat the fish.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So maybe the culinary experience back then is not like your top.
There was not. No, the culinary experience for me was from the traveling that we did while living over there.
Okay.
And so that's really the experience I got. Now it wasn't completely bad.
Did you go to the countryside?
No.
That's what I want. I want to go to the Romanian countryside.
Well, here's the thing. It wasn't. Stephen had to go. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was so excited. He had to go to Transylvania. I wanted to go to Transylvania.
Yeah.
So bad. And he said, no, you don't understand. It's not like they have hotels or restaurants or anything. He said there was nothing to eat. There was no place to stay. He literally stayed. And there's a Anthony Bourdain episode. And I think Steven said he thought it might have been the same place. He said he stayed at this hotel that had like a dusty bed with no electricity at night. And there was no food. You couldn't drink the water. And he would bring power bars because that's all they could eat. And he would eat power bars for 3 days and
No
had
water.
like jugs of bottled water. Yeah, he said it was not a cool experience at all. It's like there's no hotels, there's nothing to eat that won't kill you. And so I didn't get to go to Transylvania.
Yeah, it was like a different kind of ominous vibe.
It was when you see one day you'll have to look up the Anthony Bourdain Transylvania thing, because that place, and it truly is like spooky, creepy.
I would love to hear from someone who's from Romania now, or honestly go myself and experience it now, because I do think it's so much more lively. Like, I'm doing a lot of research on Romania, and all these old towns are now becoming like tech towns. So you have this flush of young people coming in and starting like tech companies, and it's like bars after bars, and it's more accessible. But I mean, you were just there at such a unique time. Like, again, you said Chernobyl was 10 years before. So Chernobyl fish. Then you had like the end of the communist era. So they're trying to readjust into their new lives. So you were just there at a very interesting time. And like, I always like to ask when I travel, like, is it a cat or dog place? And I know, because there's places that are strictly cats, which are Spain. Spain was strictly cats. In Asia, it was dogs. You said Romania had like, it was pretty big dog.
It was
problem.
dogs.
Yeah.
Well, it was a dog problem, and they had cats. I do remember cats too. Cats were really, I think, cats are easy pets for European cities because they can kind of roam around and they come back and they leave the windows open and they just kind of go from place to place. Ceausescu, who was the last communist ruler, well, he's not the last communist ruler, but before communism ended, he had decided he was going to build this big empire for himself in Bucharest. And so he plowed down an entire section of the city that was all these old villas in order to build these high-rise apartment buildings that led up to what they call the Parliament, which is this huge building in the middle of Bucharest. And all of his armies were supposed to live in all the apartment buildings leading up to this Parliament. And so when we moved there, when they killed him, they stopped all construction. So there were half-built buildings.
Oh, weird. Oh.
There were huge equipment sitting on the roads that never moved. They never fixed it. They never finished them. I guess they could have now. I don't know if they have now. But they halted the work because the people did not want it. There was a church. Romanians were very Eastern Orthodox. So Romanian Orthodox, kind of like the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox. And there was a very old church that was in the middle of the area that he was plowing everything down. And it was the one time that the people won they revolted. They wouldn't allow them to tear it down. And so they built around it. But I really remember, we've got pictures in front of the Parliament building. It was massive.
I think it's the second biggest building under the Pentagon. And the heaviest building in the world. And we talk about it in our episode with Emma. But yeah, it's huge. And I was looking at YouTube videos. No one really visits it. It's not like a hot spot. It's just this like ghost.
No. I mean, the Romanians hated it when we were there. They hated it. It was completely empty. It was finished, I think. If you imagine that building's there, and then there's apartment buildings that ran there was like a huge boulevard. He had his vision. There was a huge boulevard that was lined with these, there were supposed to be these really pretty high-end apartment buildings, and that was his vision. But the people in Romania hated it. Romania was the Paris of the East. If you read all of it, they have all their styles, their boulevards, everything was designed to look like Paris. So the buildings that have that same style in it. And so the newer buildings, of course, look the ones that we lived in, they were just concrete block, kind of grayish.
No love and personality goes into
no personality. The communist buildings that had no personality.
Yeah. So when they tore down all those buildings, is that why there's a dog issue? Because everyone got
Yes.
all the people got
So
homeless.
they pulled them all out and they put them in apartment buildings that didn't allow dogs. And so they had to let the dogs free
Oh my
just
God,
on
that
the
breaks
streets.
my heart.
They just let them out on the streets. And then they all,
God.
had to fight for their food. And over the years, they became these rabid dogs. You could hear them at night. Like we would, during the day, it was all fine. They would just be sleeping in the roundabouts. You'd see them and then you're like, oh, look, a pack of cute dogs. And they were little puppies and they'd be playing. You're like, oh, and then at night you'd hear barking and fighting and all.
Oh, no.
It was like wolves outside your door. Like
Wow.
you didn't walk around at night. And one of the emergency things we actually had from Colgate was that if you got bitten by one, they would immediately fly you, like helicopter you to Austria. We had like an emergency back plan if you were bitten by a street dog because they were all rabid.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
It was tragic. It was really sad.
Yeah.
But there were dogs everywhere.
I looked it up. I don't think it's as big a problem. A lot of people have started adoption services and fostering. So I think a lot of people stood up and started adoption services.
Yeah. When we were there, I guess they had decided to terminate them in a very unhumane way. And then PETA went in and said, this isn't good. And so they were like, okay, fine, we'll just leave them. Like it was my understanding, it was a financial thing. They couldn't put them, they didn't have the finance or the money.
That makes me so upset that someone has so much power to just completely take down a whole section of a city, no regards to other people's lives, build this ridiculous building. Sorry if that's rude to people.
No, it is. But
like, I mean, the size, the money, the effects of the building, I find is ridiculous.
It was very
not the.
If you read about Ceausescu, though, he had this vision, and I think he had visited China just before, and that's where he based it on.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get the love of people, what you can do is build, and a lot of leaders have done that. They think I'll just show my power. So I mean, that's one way. That's one way, and it makes me so upset. I mean, hopefully the dogs, I think the dog problem is a bit better. I really am trying to find like someone who's Romanian. I would love to hear the comparison between your time there and today's Romania. Yeah.
I'll have to look and see if I know of anybody. Yeah. Honestly, it was one of the places that visually they look like me, very Italian looking. Mm-hmm. It was still kind of, that time period was still kind of male dominated, even though the women and the men all worked. There was kind of
in the air.
the men still dominated the women. That's all I can say. I had gotten out of my car once and some man started yelling at me about something, and I was in front of my building and the doorman was standing there, and I just said, I played the I don't know what you're saying, although I knew what he was saying. And walked into my building. But he was trying to intimidate me because that's what they did. They were, I don't know. I can't explain it. I had a very sweet Romanian teacher who I think was beaten by her husband.
Wow.
And so it was, it was tragic. She ended up leaving them. But
yeah. That's one positive thing about globalization is everyone realizing the global standards for things such as how to treat women, how people in your country should be treated. So that's one really good thing about globalization. The more traveling, the more influence of each other's cultures, the less isolated some cultures are. I'm sure for how many centuries women got treated like that. But now I'm so curious. I want to get someone from Romania so I could just have a comparison story. And
I know people that traveled there and have enjoyed it, but it's still not quite like most European cities. It's not as one little cool thing that happened when we were there. Have you ever heard of Nadia Comaneci?
No.
Famous gymnast. She married an American called Bart Conner. Right when we were still living in the hotel, we'd been there for about 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. They got married in Bucharest, and a whole American people were at the same hotel as we were. So we had come home for dinner, and they were all like outside. We couldn't even go into the hotel, and so we saw them in their wedding dresses.
Oh my god!
Their wedding gear. They had just gotten out of the reception, I think, and they were heading back to the hotel. She was I want to say the first person to ever get a perfect 10.
Wow.
In gymnastics.
Wow.
1980. She was tiny. She was little.
They all are.
I mean, but young. I don't know how old she was. 14, 15. So there's a lot of cool stories about her, and she defected in some point.
Yeah. This isn't so interesting. I just didn't I knew about like the whole communism thing. You were just there at such an interesting time. And yeah,
It
like,
was.
yeah. And it kind of ties to how you're talking about like how the women were treated there and like how Nadia prevailed. It's really, really going to tie into our story. But before we go into our story about a really awesome woman, I did want to say, for those who are interested in Romania and learning more about the different kinds of countrysides that they have, I found this really cool website called beyonddracula.com because I will
oh, how cool is that?
I know. It's like, okay, guys, we're not just about Dracula, which we learned in Emma's episode. Like, Dracula really doesn't have anything to do with Romania. It's a story written by an Irish writer who based the look of Dracula off of Vlad the Impaler's castle, but Dracula's not real. And so that's why the website's called beyonddracula.com. And it's a beautiful website. Like, whoever is doing their website design, bravo. And you can really deep dive into each region. And so it's really also saying like, hey, we're not just Transylvania. And you can go into deep dive into regions, learn about how they're all different. And there's personal Romanian stories from them. You can hire tours. It's honestly, it's a gym. So it's called beyonddracula.com.
I'm going to look that one up because that sounds so cool.
Yeah, I loved looking at it. It makes you want to jump and go there. I guess some of the regions have this, but it's just so old. And they all have their carriages and their horses. And it's just old school. Like, I don't know. I'm just very...
We still had gypsies there and they had their horses and carriages.
Yes.
There were gypsies when we lived there. That was a big deal in Romania, the gypsies.
Yeah, so we talked about that on the Emma's episode. So you actually learned they like to be called Romani people. Gypsies, it's not,
yes.
They don't like that word, but the Romani people, which we talk on Emma's episode, they originally derived from India and they moved through Europe and they just have like a very different lifestyle. A lot of them, a lot of them they like to travel and they have old trades. So, but some of them do stay stationary and they've been really persecuted. So they haven't been able to I think get their foot in the door in a lot of ways. But yeah, what was your experience with the Romani people while in Romania?
Well, the only experience I had was when they were doing the renovations on and I didn't know anything. I mean, I'd see them on the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because they just had horses and carriages and
I love that.
Would drive them around town, which is crazy. In 96, you're like, wow, is this real or not?
It's like the Amish.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, that part. But the wife of the general manager of Colgate at the time was Romanian, and she was helping me kind of with some of the translations and trying to figure out why it was taking so long for them to fix my apartment. And so we went there one day, and she was very verbal, this Romanian woman. And she laid into this man and something about, she kept saying, can't believe you would bring gypsies into the house. And that's what I remember about it. It's how hated they were.
That's awful.
For bringing people in to the apartment to work on it. That the Romanian, she particularly absolutely hated them. They were really hated.
Yeah.
By I guess maybe the upper class of locals.
Yes, that's very well known. They've been persecuted not just in Romania but throughout Europe, and it's kind of interesting because it's like, let's say the reasons they hate them is because they are on the street. Sometimes they're begging, and it's like, well, they can't really rise up in society if no one really gives them the opportunity. I mean, it's hard, and you can.
Well, and there's a lot of thefts and things too that were blamed on them. There's a lot of crime and stuff that was
and
around.
That comes with poverty. And that's not that it also doesn't define a whole ethnicity. I definitely was learning about that, and I'm very interested in Romani people. And as I talk in the episode with Emma, they are a massive influence to music. All the music you listen to today, you can trace it right back to the Romani people.
There's a huge, and they still call them gypsies. There's a huge community of them in France, in Saint-Maurice de la Mer, and they all play music and all around the town. And they have all of these outdoor restaurants, and then there's always people playing music, and it's actually culturally positive. That whole town is all about the gypsy music, and they have these cool bands that travel and stuff. And so that's a positive gypsy
Yeah, exactly. Like if you
town
can just
and
get over what makes us different, you could sit there and judge and be like, "Ugh, look at them," or you'd be like, "Oh my God, I kind of want to dance." Like you could, or you could join the party. So I just think there's different mentalities on how we could treat each other. And over here, you have this town who's embracing it. Who are like, look, we got like live musicians, like
everywhere. They were
yeah.
everywhere. It was so cool.
Yeah, and they're a huge influence to flamenco music, which everyone loves flamenco music. I do.
Yes.
You can trace it. Oh, French jazz can go right back to the Romani people. It's so interesting. We go into deeper on Emma's episode about them. Yeah, but I did want to get into our story today. So you could think of this as a feminist story, but I think of it as just an incredible story about aviation. So take it how you want. But I thought this would be also very fitting and inspiring to you because like this woman, Smaranda, she's very determined and she doesn't let obstacles stop her. And I always thought like you were the same way. Like if there's a problem, you're like, oh, well, I can't do it. You're definitely one of those people who was like, well, did you try all these other things? So,
that's me.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay.
There's a way. There's always a way.
Yes. You will like Smaranda. So I wonder if you can help me with her name. So it's Smaranda, but her last name is Braescu. Brăescu. Okay.
Yeah. So, the SCU is always SCU.
Okay. That's
so
good to
it's got to be Brăescu.
Smaranda Brăescu was born on May 21st, 1897. So it's way back when in the Hentesti, Romania, which is deep in the countryside. And she grew up as a normal girl and she had no idea around age 14 that she would see something that would change and determine her life forever. So she sees a plane for the first time in 1912, which would be kind of crazy. If you're just like, I don't know, gardening. And he's like, look up and there's like something flying.
That's a big bird.
Yeah. I would be kind of scared, but she was not scared. She was immediately curious and it could have just stayed an exciting memory, but she actually worked in a town that had a military aviation school. So she got to go and kind of learn about that. She's very lucky with that. So she was surrounded by planes and pilots. And then finally around 1923, she finally got her chance and she flew in the air and around 1923. And she was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, and around this time, I'm sure she's like, I don't know, 16, 17. Her options are possibly stay in the family and farm or get married very quickly, I'm assuming. But she's like, I want to be in a plane. So, and I'm just thinking the first time flying in a plane, like I think flying is awesome every time I do it now. Like it's 2022. I can't imagine back then getting in a plane.
When there's no air pressure and you have to have masks on, helmets. And
and there's like no
totally
safety.
Different in 1912.
Yeah, there's no safety
and
rules.
It's cold. You have to wear jackets because there's no.
And
completely different experience.
Yeah, I'm sure like the minute you're off the ground, you're like, I don't know if we're going to get back down. It's just a very different experience. So just kind of put yourself in that mindset. But yeah, she wanted to be a pilot. And after that experience, she really wanted to like apply herself to do that. But the military was like, no, you're a woman. So what do? You could quit there. You could just say, oh, that was really nice. I loved that. That's just something I'll think about for the rest of my life. But she decided to act on it and she enrolled in the Academy of Fine Arts in Bucharest. And so let's talk about this time period a little bit. So this is the 1920s, which everyone loves the 1920s. It's the golden age of aviation also. So small biplanes to commercial airlines, there's round the world flights, skydiving, there's parachuting is coming into play. I'm not sure. I guess Amelia Earhart's kind of around this time too. But let's also talk about what it's like to be a woman in the early 1900s. I mean, that's it. Like you're a woman. That's all you really have to your name. You have no rights. You have no respect. You cannot vote. You cannot have a job. You can't do anything but produce children. And they only got the right to vote in 1938. So, I mean, these things wouldn't even come close to her time period for a while. So imagine trying to do something that the whole world is new to, and you can't hold a job, have any voice on anything. I mean, you even in the 90s, you got treated badly by the men there. Like
not by all of them,
but
you definitely saw the influence.
Yeah. So imagine all that energy, all the trials you're going to have to do just to do something that no one's really doing, like getting in a plane, flying a plane, making a career out of it. So, and it's a bit crazy to think about all these rights that like we have now. And it's really, really recent.
Don't take them for granted.
Absolutely. No, you hear stories about this, and even my grandmother Lolly, who's everyone loves, she actually won the favorite guest of last season was my grandmother.
Oh, that's awesome. She was so good.
She was talking about like 1950s. She said 1950s, you got two options, be a mom and you could do a secretary or preschool teacher. You can't be a professor. Those are your options as a woman.
You have to think back, Siti,
That's our grandmother, yeah. Or your mom, yeah.
Siti is my mother, Mary Grace Ritchie. And she went to an all-girls school, St. Mary of the Woods, and majored in biology.
Mm-hmm.
And she came back to Birmingham. She actually worked in research until she was pregnant with my oldest brother. So she even worked right after she got married. So she was also kind of a trailblazer in that time period. I also think it had to do with now, mom is Italian, and so they've had to kind of be strong in America, especially in America South. And then dad is Lebanese. And so, you have these cultural people from different countries that come over and to a completely new culture, and they have to, fight through it and make their way from the ground up. And so mom would have been a couple of generations in, and she had done pretty well. So I have to remember. So it would have been around that time. So still, she was pretty independent. She was considered old when she got married. I think she was 24.
Oh.
That was considered really old. She did all this school, and she actually went back when we were little and went back and got a master's.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
So I don't think they weren't capable of it. I think that the fact that my dad, he always treats everybody equally.
Yes.
Like he always treated mom and gave her the respect for all the things, because she was an amazingly smart person. And I think that women had gone a long ways. I mean, when I was growing up, I never felt like, even in Alabama, I never felt like I was restrained from doing anything I wanted to do. But maybe that's because I had my dad that was always behind us saying, you can do anything you want to do if you put your mind to it. And so I think that mentally, if you are determined, nothing can hold you back if you stay determined and don't allow anybody to do it. And throughout my whole career, whether it was working or with kids or whatever, I don't allow people to tell me I can't do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's, man, woman, whoever, don't allow anybody to say you can't do something. I mean, go out there with the full intent of doing the best you can do. And if it fails, just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody fails. And so I appreciate people that have had major struggles in a time period where they didn't have as much freedom as I did, and were still able to, persevere.
Yeah, because that's your option back then. It's like, okay, you just sit back, or you're gonna be like, no, that's not right. And because these trailblazers, especially around the 1900s, is because the rights that we have now, which is still really recent. So, I mean, and Smaranda's an absolute trailblazer. And just before we got really into her story, I wanted to put some context to the background of like how exciting aviation right now is, and how you can really appreciate what she's about to accomplish, because there's a million more walls in front of her. So yeah, I mean, back to Smaranda, she wasn't just thinking about being a pilot. She actually wanted to parachute. That's what really excited her, was jumping out of airplanes. And so it's so insane.
Go her.
Same. I was like, okay. So she trains with the German engineer and parachutist Otto Heineck, and she executes her very first parachute jump in July 1928 in Germany. And she becomes the first parachutist woman in Romania. And so after this, she returns to Romania to aviation school. She's like, okay, I'm the first one, so pretty sure I can get in the school now. And they're like, no. And this is the quote they said to her. They said, women are not allowed to enter aviation as they do not have strong nerves and the country does not have planes to waste. Oh my God. I thought that was so funny.
Gosh, they haven't changed at all.
No, I just love how we don't have planes to waste. I'm pretty sure everyone was new at flying, and there were lots of planes that were wasted on anyone back then. But yeah, so that doesn't stop her. She raises money and jumps for air shows, and she becomes an air icon in Romania. So now I'm sure the aviation school was like, crap, you want a scholarship? I'm sure they were kind of regretting it then. But in August 1930, Smaranda has a really bad accident, and she's injured for 6 months. And again, that should have stopped her being like, hey, like, this is pretty dangerous, jumping out of planes. But she said, quote, I'm not afraid of death. I may be hurt by invalidity, but failure will torment me harder. She keeps parachuting and skydiving and receives world records and recognition so much that she ends up getting invited to go to the United States, all the way from Romania. So she can accomplish bigger goals there. But so she gets invited to go to the United States of America to jump and do air shows, but Romania still would not give her a pilot license. They were like, not here, lady. But so she heads to California. Well, she goes to Florida first, but she finds out that parachuting in the Everglades is dangerous and swampy and full of gators. So that's
yeah.
Oh, you might land, but you might get eaten the minute you get there, or try to get out of a swamp.
Don't want to be stuck in a tree dangling.
Yeah, that's like a survivor story. So let's not parachute in Florida. So she heads to California where there's no crocodiles, and so she has so many failed attempts. I'm not going to go through her whole list, but she tried like 20 different times throughout California, and it wasn't all really her. It was just so many different random things kept happening. A lot to weather, technical issues. One time while she was trying to skydive over the Sierra Nevadas, they had to stop because the pilot got too drunk off whiskey. And so they casual day drinking over the Sierra Nevadas. I just don't understand people.
Different time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a different time.
Yeah. He was like, you know what sounds good flying over these mountains? A good couple pounds of whiskey. So they couldn't do that because that sounds dangerous. So after so many failed attempts, she was running out of money, all the money that she raised. And she decided no matter what, the next job, whether the pilot's drunk or there's a hurricane, I got to jump. I need to make it this jump. So she tries one more time. As the plane reaches 7,500 meters, the pilot says they're running out of oxygen. And apparently he fainted. And I'm not sure like what happened to him, but she jumped. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the pilot. Apparently he like ran out of oxygen.
He's like, you're on your own, dude. I got things to do.
Literally like unconscious driving a plane.
Hell, he can glide for a little while until he wakes up.
So we don't know what happened to that pilot, but Smaranda needed to do what she had to do. And she jumped and she executes a 7,233 meter jump and becomes a world champion in skydiving by May 1932. So
wow.
Yeah, like she's accomplished a lot since 14.
Did she end up staying in the States or did she go back to Romania?
She goes back to Europe, but you would think she probably would stay there because that's where all of her fame kind of started. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, but you still have family and you have, you want to be close to home.
Yeah. And I think she still had hope that Romania would give her damn pilot license. So she went to the United States and she just jumped into fame. And so she was like, okay, I'm going to go back to Romania. And on her way back, the Romanian king welcomes her home. And he welcomes her home back to Romania and she raises her own money for a plane. And I don't think she got her pilot license though from the country, but she spends the next few years flying around Europe. And then, we're thinking about the time period. It's 1938.
World War II.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything changes for everyone around this point. It's not about jumping into fame for being a pilot. Everyone's life's about to be changed. So I think in the beginning of the war, the Romanian army is on the Axis side, on Germany's side, but they switch halfway through the war. But she helps the Romanian army the whole time. And she's a parachute instructor and she flies the plane into war zones and is moving wounded into hospitals. So that's what she does for those few years, which is kind of weird because I think she was helping Germany and then she was helping the Allies at the end of the war. But even though World War II ended, the war and conflict did not stop there. As we were talking about, communism, a regime came into Romania and the party took over. And this is when she took like a second role in her life. Smaranda, along with other leaders, fought against, there was a rigged election and they fought against it. And she was a huge activist, very loud about it. And she was accused of being against the new state and was sentenced to prison. She never made it to prison, though. She was like, not today. So she ran from the Communist Party using multiple identities, and she spent her last years in hiding, and no one knows where she went or how she died. Yeah. We have nothing else.
So they never figured out where she ended up?
We never found her, and which is a good thing, because if we did find out, that means they would have probably put her in prison.
Or it's possible she escaped and ended up in the nearby country.
Exactly. So I'm really hoping she got to escape and that she got to keep flying. I'm sure she did. I mean, she went through all that.
So what year did she disappear? Would have been in the 40s?
I think so. Because the World War II ended 1945. Communist Party. I'm not exactly sure when the regime started, but I think it was pretty quickly because she started protesting the election. So I'm sure like immediately they're like, oh goodness, no, like you can't be protesting against us. So they were after her and she figured out a way how to get herself out of that situation. And yeah, we just don't know where she went. We have nothing else on her story. Like
I can't believe there's nothing else. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of her.
Yeah, that's why I love doing this podcast. There's so many other names in history that are just not told at all.
I think a lot of them are creeping out now that we've kind of got to think the world's more connected. So you're finding more stories, especially during World War II. There's a lot of women. Women did a lot during World War II. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that were pretty amazing that brought women to the forefront.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how big she is known in Romania too. I'm not sure, because she's a patriot for her country, but she also stood up for something that she knew was wrong for her country in her eyes. And she set the stage for aviation. So maybe in the pilot world of Romania, they really know about her, but I'm not sure how big she is, you know, if a name.
I have to see if I can reach out to my friend who's still there. I haven't talked to her in a long time.
Yeah, see if she knows about Smaranda. But I mean, I have mad respect for her because she pushed boundaries in aviation in general, and not even just for women, like as a war hero, helping out her country. She's an activist for her country, standing against oppression. You could take away from this as a story of feminism, or if anything, how you were saying earlier, it's a story of don't give up, like stand your ground. If this woman can achieve all this, especially against her own government, what can you do?
Exactly.
It's so inspiring.
You know, so there's a whole lot more out there that you can do that, you know, you just have to get out there and do it.
Yeah. What's something in your life where you were definitely, there were some walls, you were told no, and you found a different way? And it's an on the spot question.
That is such an on the spot question. I don't know. I never felt like I was ever deprived of anything. I tried a lot of things and failed. I mean, I just failed because I wasn't as good as the other people. And I didn't have a problem with that. It just made me work harder.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, get out there and do it. And then, and she did it, even though she had, you know, things, she did it. And she just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And sometimes you just have to win one person, one person to change their mind. And then that one person will say, I'll give her a chance.
Yeah. You know? Or diversify your audience, like how, Romania was not about her, but the US was. You know, so she learned how to diversify her options. She couldn't find what she wanted in Romania. So she went out and then she came back, you know?
I mean, I can't even imagine in the early 30s being able to get from Romania to California, which is, you know, halfway across the world, or even get enough attention in California.
I know. How did she, because it's not like today where it's social media, like that was, I'm just sure, pure word of mouth. Maybe some newspapers wrote about her. Yeah, someone or something had to happen
somewhere. Now, maybe when she spent time in Germany.
Yeah, maybe Otto helped her.
Somewhere she got enough support to get her over there, because that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
to get from Romania. I mean, it was hard for us to get to Romania in the 90s. You know, it was, and you know, it's not that far. If you look at it on the map, you're like, what's so far about it? But it's, you know, it was just different. I can't explain. It was. Times are different, and you do have to sometimes you have to bring yourself back to a time period, because you can't think of her in modern terms. You actually have to think of her in pre-World War II terms, which in, you know, 1912, even pre-World War I terms. So, which is pretty impressive. And in the countryside, small villages of that time period were very remote. It was, you know, going to the big city of Bucharest for her was probably a really big deal.
Oh my God, yeah.
To leave your family.
Yes,
at a very young age was probably a very big deal for her. And she probably never thought of it. She might have, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we can look at her big accomplishments, but all those little ones, even the tiny ones, are pretty insane to think about.
You can't imagine somebody from a farm town being able to, you know, you just have to, you know, she was driven. She was definitely a driven woman, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love her story. And also the fact that her favorite thing to do was parachuting and skydiving, which I feel like I'm against it. I just don't have a desire, you know, but people love to do it.
It's definitely not on my list.
Yeah, same. I went rock climbing the other day, and I'm telling you, this thing was like 10 feet off the ground. And I was looking down at my friend and I was like, help. And he was like, you're fine. He's like, you're fine. Just you're holding on to something. And but honestly, I was like, okay, let me try again. And I did it over and over and over. And then I was like, oh, this is fun. So I think like that was my own little, like,
just go out there and try. I think the moral of the story is go out there and try.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't let anybody, don't let them bring any barriers. Go out there and just try things.
Yeah. Is there like something really adventurous that's on your bucket list that you want to do?
I don't know if I have any adventure left in me. I'm kidding. I would say hiking things. You know, for me, it's still about travel.
Yeah,
I'm still about seeing the world, about travel.
Yeah.
I like history.
Same.
I like anything, any part of history. So I always kind of base my travel around history, and I like to read about it and study for things before I go there.
Yeah.
Research and, kind of make a loose agenda of what I want to do and what I want to see and what I want to learn. And
yeah, same.
at least one incredible thing, So I don't think flying and jumping out of airplanes are on my list.
Yeah.
I want to do things like see all the different Grand Slams of tennis before I die,
Yes. Yeah.
Go and visit all, I still have a whole bucket list of places I'd love to visit.
Yeah. So we've kind of covered a lot in Romania. We got the haunted forest, the Romani people. We got to get your experience about living in post-communist era.
Post-communist.
And then the brave and headstrong aviation star, Smaranda Brăescu. Was it? I'm saying her last name wrong.
It's Scu.
Brăescu.
SCU is Scu.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And did you have any lasting thoughts you want to say about Smaranda or Romania?
No. It was an interesting experience. We were only there a year, so it was a very interesting year from start to finish. One really funny thing was at the end of the year, they completely shut down from Christmas to New Year's, like no restaurants, no stores, no offices or everything. I don't know if they still do that, but I was like, really? This is a big city. They had little kiosks that sold water, and there were some interesting, culturally different things. I mean, anywhere in the world that you live, there's cultural differences, and I always kind of, when in Rome thing, do what the population does, and you kind of try to blend into their culture. In a respectful way. Like you don't go in and say, I'm an American, you have to do what I want to do.
Exactly.
You have to go in and respect their culture and learn. And sometimes it's really small things that they appreciate. Like in France, it's when you walk into a store and they say, bonjour, madame. You're supposed to say, bonjour, madame. Or monsieur back. You're supposed to greet them. They greeted you. You're supposed to greet them back.
Yeah.
There's little small things that you don't think about that have an impact on them. They don't get mad about it. They just think, why didn't they do why didn't they do the extra research
or observe or just observe around
observe you. Watch. And that's what I do a lot of. I'm definitely more of an observe
around you. I feel like I didn't do that when I first went to France. I feel like I remember me, Grace, and Emma, we got in trouble a lot for laughing too loud in the restaurant.
That's another thing. People are very attentive to, and I think that's very American. We're very loud. Americans are loud. So I think we're sometimes considered obnoxious because of our liveliness.
I would say we're fun, but okay.
You can be lively. We are lively.
We're lively. Yeah.
We're lively people.
Yeah.
But it's good to respect. Like it's one thing to be, lively outside in the outside world. It's another thing to be like in a train cabin with a small space and be too lively.
Yeah, exactly. But what was your favorite thing you learned today on this episode?
I love the story. I love the story of your aviator, Miranda.
Yeah. She's awesome. I loved finding her story and stuff. And before we wrap up, did you want to say anything else about the Applewood Manor?
Applewood Manor, come visit us. I want y'all to look us up at www.applewoodmanor.com. We've got tons of photos, or follow us at applewoodmanor.com. I think it's at Applewood Manor on Instagram and Facebook. It's a boutique bed and breakfast. It's not your old-fashioned bed and breakfast. It's really has a unique kind of art atmosphere, cool, clean, more modern boutique rooms.
Yeah.
I think you'll find. Plus, we have an acre property in downtown Asheville, even though we're a mile from town, which is hard to come about.
Yeah.
So we've got a really beautiful backyard and patio. There's 3 rooms, have their own private porches. And we have great team here. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
Come visit us.
Yeah. And if anything, if y'all are cheeseheads like me, just follow the Instagram so you can look at the literal beautiful cheeses that y'all post. Like, oh my God. And you're a chef too. So you made paella. We
made paella. Actually, right now we're doing, because we've got the great local ingredients, we're making homemade yogurt every day.
Your yogurt is amazing. Oh my gosh.
We make homemade yogurt, granola. We get as much as we can homemade, we do it. Another thing that we've added is that we promote an artist, a local artist. You know, the River Arts District is a huge art community. And so we've just started promoting on our stairwell. We've created a little gallery called the Step Above Gallery, and it promotes a local artist every month. We're adding things constantly, you know, updating experiences, making it fun. Asheville's fun on its own, and we're trying to even make it more fun.
Yeah, exactly. Asheville's remember Asheville, not Nashville. Asheville's a really fun, really fun town. Yeah. But so I'll put all on the show notes, and on Instagram, I'll post where to find y'all if y'all ever do. And then y'all could just reach out to Robin. And if y'all wanted to book with y'all, y'all are definitely a hot spot. So, and hot commodities. So definitely book ahead. I think y'all are.
Book ahead.
Yeah, y'all are definitely like hot in town. But just to wrap up my part of the episode, I wanted to give some business. Just to please leave a quick rating or review on whatever platform you're using. It takes 2 seconds, but man, it really jumps the podcast up on the apps. Just those little 2 things you can do, rating or review. It gets the show to more people. And then also, this is a country episode. So for new listeners, I spin the globe in whatever country I land on. We tell feature stories. We can get people who have been there, but we interchange those with travel stories. So that's when I read out travel stories you've written in, and I just need more written in. If you have them, they can be short, long, you can keep it anonymous, but write in your best travel stories to culturecultshow@gmail.com. We've had so many good travel stories. I would love to hear more. We could also, let's say like, you know more about Romania and you just want to tell me more about it. You message me on Instagram at culturecultshow. If you have suggestions, like this show is for y'all. So I want to make sure it's an experience you'll like. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Marie. I've really had so much fun.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear the show.
Yeah. It's your first, you'll definitely be on for more. I definitely want to hear some of your travel stories. But so there's like 197 countries to cover on this podcast, which I'll probably, that's a lot. So are there any countries that you want to come on and learn about or speak about? Are there other countries you're interested in?
You know, I have always wanted to go to Australia. And it's got an interesting history, kind of like the US. So that might be a fun one to tackle.
Yeah.
Or New Zealand.
New Zealand. Okay. Yeah. I'll have you down. I have a list of what guests want to be on, and I'll have you down for those 2. Australia is going to be, so man, I get so intimidated by some of these countries because they have so much written history. And then some countries are hard, like Zimbabwe for next season was really hard because the Shona people they do most of their history verbally. So yeah, I'll have you down for Australia, New Zealand, but I'll see you soon at the family beach trip. Which I'm so excited.
We will be there.
Yeah.
We should do a whole episode on family vacation.
That would be really, actually, yeah, you'll have some crazy.
Actually, we need to do a group one on my family when we almost died in the camper.
Yeah.
The Ritchie family vacation almost ended our lives. And nobody would be here anymore. And we still don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened. It was God lifted us up and put us back on the road. That's all I know, because we should have died. But
okay, we definitely want that one. But yeah, for the rest of y'all, stay tuned for next week for another travel story episode, and we'll have Robin on again. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
This was fun.
Yes, and cheers, y'all.